Welcome to the Twinkl Talks EYFS podcast. Working in the early years is busy, funny, messy, and exhausting. Join me, Shana, some of the Twinkl EYFS team, special guest speakers, and other early years practitioners as we talk honestly about our experiences. Whether you're listening for CPD, on your commute, or to help you relax, Twinkl EYFS will share everything you need to know about all things early years. Hello, it's Shana here from the Twinkl Talks EYFS podcast. It is great to be back. I hope you have had a lovely week. This week's episode is part 2 of our little series on schemas. I know you've been waiting a little while for this. Thank you so much for being patient. In the first episode on schemas, we just did a general overview on what schemas are, why they're so important, how they impact a child's development. But for this episode, we're going to get right stuck into all 9 different schemas and give you some examples of what they might look like and how we can help. So without further ado, Julia and Louise from our wonderful Early Years CPD team, take it away. Thank you for coming back, Julia and Louise. This is part 2 of schemas. We decided to split it into 2, didn't we? Because it's quite a big subject and we didn't want to miss anything out. So episode 1 was all about schemas as a whole, the theory behind it, the science, because these ladies are very clever and they told me lots of things. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty, aren't we, of the different schemas. So Julia and Louise, let's get right stuck in. A little bit of a recap. What are schemas and why is schema play so important in early years?
Right, hi everybody. So schemas are repeatable patterns of actions that children follow or become fascinated in as they explore and play. And it helps them to make sort of sense of the world around them, figuring out how things work and responding to things that they see and they experience. So why is it important? So schema play helps children, become fully engaged and immersed in their learning and their play. They play at a deeper level. They sort of learn to modify their behaviour and regulate themselves, test out their thinking, really, their ways of thinking.
I love it. Like, I could feel the enthusiasm through that. I was like, yes, let's get some schema. Let's get engaged, children. Let's do it. Because it really is like the science of learning about the world, isn't it? This is kind of like what underpins how we learn things, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. We still do it today.
Exactly. So if you think about children that you see in your setting, they're going to be doing things like lining things up repeatedly, or fascinated with how things are rotating or pouring.
See, she's making it sound really whimsical here, right? And it is, however. You will also see children lobbing things across the classroom, children tipping things all over the floor,
children hiding your favourite watch,
children hiding your keys, okay?
So that is true.
Yeah, I mean, it is a magical, beautiful thing, but there is also that side of why, child?
And why today? Why my things?
It's a need. They need to experience these things.
Do they need to hide my wallet, though? Do they need
That's
to
part
hide
of the process, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Everything is up for grabs. If you don't want your wallet disappeared, you hide it first.
Oh, so it's my fault. Okay.
Yes.
Right. I see how it is. Okay. Lesson learned. Right. Yes. In the terms of these schemas then, ladies, I really want to go into each one of them and really look at what they actually mean and what they could look like at home, in settings, or just in terms of general behaviour and activities that they can do. So one of the schemas is called transporting. Now, I'm guessing that's something to do with moving.
Yeah, definitely. So it's to do with lots of different things in terms of distance and journeys and exploring how things travel from one place to another. And that also includes them. So it could be an object, but it also could be how they travel from one place to another. So you might see children carrying items from place to place. You might see them picking up and moving things. And sometimes it's unpleasant things as well as pleasant things that they might...
Okay, you need to give me an example here. What do you mean? Be specific, please. What is this? Picking up poop? Is that what you're saying?
picking up mud.
Oh, she means poop. She means poop, listeners. She just can't say that word.
Or just things that you might not want them to necessarily pick up and transport. So so things
rubbish that they
going
find
through the bin,
rubbish, going through the bin and moving things, or so other things that they might do, they might lose items or find items in unusual places. And in this schema, children generally look very, very busy.
busy bees.
When you say move, like transporting themselves, is it like as in exploring movement, like rolling or walking or jumping or things like that, or have I got it wrong?
Yeah, I would say all of that, as well as maybe, so for example, being very interested in packing something up and then moving it somewhere else. So you might see like them being quite interested in shopping and shopping bags and suitcases and travel. So they'll be interested in moving themselves and objects.
And that's why those like little cute. I remember I had one when I was a little girl. The red cars that you sit in.
Oh, with the
And
yellow steering wheel.
Yeah. And you push yourself down.
Yes, and you want lots of things in your car too sometimes.
Yeah, you put all the things in your car because you're going shopping.
Go on holiday.
And on holiday. And then like, the garden wall's in the way and you're trying to get around the garden wall, you just can't, I'm having vivid
flashbacks. We're there.
Definitely.
I'm there, I can feel it.
Not only that, but things like packing a bag full of things and then transporting it somewhere completely different, which for educators can be quite frustrating because you're like, where's all of that gone? And parents as well, that they've lost a whole cupboard of interesting items because children have packed them into something and moved them to a different part of the house. So
might be a more challenging one with organising and keeping tidy.
Yeah.
Tidy up time might be more interesting.
I was going to say, these are the kids in the tidy up where you're just like, you know what, just stop. It would be easier if you just didn't help.
Well, it's usually like 5 minutes before you're about to do the tidy up song. You see them and you're like, ugh, if you just couldn't, that would be great.
Adult support for tidy up time. That's not where it goes.
At the beginning of the day.
So actually, speaking of settings then, what kind of activities or things that we do as practitioners to enable transporting schema play?
Yeah, so there's loads of different things. So things like pouring. So obviously that's transporting water or sand in different ways using jugs and buckets and bottles and finding how you can move things in different ways. Providing things like wheeled toys and trains and prams and walkers. So we're thinking big and small objects. Like I've mentioned, providing loads of different ways to transport things. So prams, bags, suitcases, boxes, trolleys, anything like that. Or wheelbarrows and buckets. So providing loads of different resources that will enable children to explore how to move an object from place to place.
Cute. I like it. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm inspired already. I'm thinking of September, like, oh, what can we put in these areas? I like it. So next schema then, trajectory. What's that all about?
So trajectory, again, is a little bit about movement because children will be learning how to move things and how then they respond. So they might be moving their bodies or objects in horizontal and vertical movements.
So this is where the lobbing comes in, is that right?
This is where things will be thrown.
Okay.
Get yourself prepared.
All right.
And it might be messy and it might be noisy as well. So children in this schema throw objects, like we've mentioned. They quite often will be making a mess because they'll be dropping items and moving them and making noise while they move them because they're interested in how, when you move something, the response that it has.
Yeah. And that can be making a noise, making a sound, making a splat when they throw spaghetti on the floor, which I actually think is quite fun, but Yeah,
well, I love messy play. So yes, definitely responding to how something moves. And making a mess while you do it is something that everybody needs a little bit of in their life.
It's very freeing, isn't it?
It is. I think it's a good one to talk to parents and caregivers about because I feel like it's one that children can sometimes be told not to do a lot. So it's like finding a balance between doing it all the time and still, finding a balance where they can enjoy it, but not, they're throwing food at the walls
Yeah, and this is
constantly.
my thing. I feel like it's a lot easier to scaffold as an adult in a setting, in a controlled environment. I think it's a
Yes,
lot harder for parents at home to allow trajectory, because if I'm thinking of myself as a parent, I'm like, no, they
exactly.
are not throwing the ball inside. No, they are not dropping the jelly on the floor. Like, I can see why they say no.
Yeah, of
So how can we
Yeah.
support
course.
them? What can we do for them?
I think one of the things is if you are struggling with trajectory inside, definitely
Mm,
taking it outside and seeing
okay.
how they can explore things in the outdoor environment is quite a nice way if you're quite, you have white walls, etc.
Yeah. Rented accommodation. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe also thinking about the type of mess that you may do inside. So if they are going through the trajectory schema, then maybe providing drier messy play
Mm.
activities inside and leaving the wetter things for outside. Yeah, so other things like throwing things at targets, so using skittles and balls and throwing balls into buckets, or toy paper aeroplanes, and maybe sort of providing things like ramps and different surfaces that children can move objects down or roll things down. So guttering pipes and tubings and tubing and ramps, those are all sort of loose parts that are great for this schema. But the other side of it is obviously them exploring their whole body in playful activities. So providing lots of physical play, because it's about them exploring their movement of their body as well as objects.
And again, you could use things like, I mean, I remember in my setting, we used loose parts like big planks and, there's like milk tray pallet-y things.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Like they were
crates.
blue and green and black.
Yeah.
Crates, that's the one, crates. Yeah, milk crates. And we made different obstacle courses and they were excited to find out what they had to do on that day, or if it was set up the same, it'd be like, well, you can't walk on it this time. You've got to crawl on it. You've got to crawl through the obstacle course or things like that. Is that on the
Oh
right line?
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. Loads of different ways of providing physical play. And that can also be things like climbing frames and,
Mm.
even using a yo-yo. That is a type of physical play that children can enjoy.
Cool. Okay. Lots of ideas there then. What about this schema called enclosing?
Enclosing. Yeah, you
What's
seem
that?
confused. You're like,
I
what is
am.
this?
Enclosing?
So it's all about creating boundaries and then often putting things inside other things.
Okay. Got it.
So it is a lot about boundary making. So you might see children putting resources away, but in the wrong place.
Mm.
So just kind of putting things in different enclosed spaces because they want to put it in containers and they want to group resources together as well. So sometimes they don't want things to touch. So you might see this a lot with food. I think that comes up quite a
Yeah.
lot. And I think sometimes when they've grouped things, for example, by color or by size, they might put them together in piles and then they don't want them to interact because they're making little boundaries. They're seeing how sorting things basically in different ways.
I've seen it a lot, especially when we do the topic of the farm, because you
Mm,
naturally have, like, in the small world area, like little
exactly.
boundaries for different areas, and you'll make one boundary and the kids just put everything in it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, they don't fit. The pigs go over
It's
there,
not
the horses
about
go over
that.
here. I know I'm missing the point, aren't I? I'm just not seeing through the child's eyes.
Yeah. And that's our own enclosing
Okay,
schema coming out, because we know more categories. We're like, oh,
right.
everything should go together with the right category. But for them, they're like, well, I'm just going to put a big old group of toys together. And then
Yeah.
later down the line, they might be like, oh, these are the zoo animals and these are the farmyard animals, and then separate those possibly. So it can be
Mm.
something that they then grow and decide to group in different ways.
This is a bit of an oddball question. Is
Hmm.
it actual physical boundaries, or do they have invisible or internal boundaries as well?
I think a bit of both, because sometimes there's physically the mini fences that we were talking
Yeah.
about in Small World, or they can use ropes or strings to actually physically create boundaries, or they can even draw or paint enclosed shapes and spaces. But sometimes it's just, in their head, if they're playing a game, they're like, no, we're over here, you stay over there. And they
Right.
put like a invisible boundary in their head, or like the boundary goes from the tree to the other tree and they're like, oh no, this is our space, or like only for girls, only for boys. You know, sometimes they do that.
That's really interesting because I never noticed that kind of behaviour as an enclosing schema before, because I have seen a lot of children pick places for their friends to play. And I always thought it was just being mean. Like, oh no, you go play over there. We're playing
Well,
here.
it depends how it kind of like arrives. You don't want children to be mean to each other.
Yeah, and they're really nice to each other and they love each other and they're great friends. But so they've just got this idea in their head of where things are categorized,
grouped
basically.
together.
Like if they're playing a game together, I remember very vividly a superhero and supervillain game. And one of the little girls, she was the superhero like leader, and she was saying to all the villains, no, the villains are over there.
Yeah.
That's like your hideout. You stay there. You can't come to us.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a similar thing.
It's like grouping them in their own
Yeah.
way in their brains. And so that's why it's quite fascinating when they are invisible boundaries, because obviously as adults we can't see those. And we're like,
Yeah.
what do you mean we can't come over here?
Right. I was like, why can't they come over here, young lady? Yes,
Yeah.
a villain can go wherever they want. And I
Exactly.
completely misunderstood what they were doing. Whoops.
It can appear in different ways, and that's why it's interesting to talk about schema play and behaviour, because it's not always obvious. You know, like with the little fences, you go, okay, I see what you're doing. But outside playing games, you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So how can we like promote that in our settings?
Well, I mean, there's lots of things we can provide for children, like different types of small world objects and loose parts play that they can kind of sort, and different types of containers as well that they can see, you know, how things might fit, because it's really good for sizing and sorting objects, which is a big thing in maths, obviously. And then creating boundaries, we can kind of provide things that they can use to create. So like we were talking about with the string and, you know, blocks, or even those crates. That's a nice one that they sometimes create boundaries with outside, or big twigs and things. And they also sometimes like to hide themselves. So that's something that can also, enclosing and enveloping, they can cross over together, because sometimes they hide themselves and objects.
Well, I think this is where I got confused, because I was like, I'm sure it was called enveloping. So enveloping's a separate schema. Tell us about that then while we're here.
Okay, so enveloping is something where they're almost entirely hiding an object or themselves from view,
right?
But usually like by completely containing it. So it's one of those ones that does get quite confusing with enclosing, but it's more like you might see them wrapping things up in fabric or wrapping things up in paper, and like basically you can no longer see whatever it is that they're hiding. So it's really like it's disappearing from view in a way.
But why? Why do they want it to disappear?
But I mean, why do they want to do any of these things? It's a fascination that they're exploring.
Just to see that it happens, or that it comes back when they reveal it, or...
Yeah, it's something that they're basically exploring, because I mean, that's the fascination of like hide and seek in itself as well. Like they like seeing that things have kind of, you know, disappeared and come back again.
Peekaboo.
Yeah, these are all, in a way, it's something fascinating about something going away and then also doing it themselves as well. Like they like to hide things, you know, when they've got like those little, they almost make those little stick and fabric packages, you know, they'll make that and they'll have lots of secret things in there, and that's very exciting for them.
The amount of games we used to play when I was little about how we were homeless and we had to pack all our things and go away, like that was a schema. That was totally a schema. I just wanted to pack, I just wanted to pack things away and then unpack them, and then I'd be like, right, okay, we've got to move now, we've got to go to the next bit, and just pack it away again. So
I think that's quite a magical thing, isn't it? Hiding something or burying it and then finding it again is just magical.
And there's something very exciting about it, because even themselves, they might have forgotten what they've hidden in there. Someone else doesn't know. They can guess. When they hide themselves, they're very excited because they think, you know, there's something about that you can't quite capture. That spark of like, oh, I'm so scared and someone might find me or they might not, you know, like it's very exciting for them. It's something else to explore.
I feel like as well, that's kind of where they start to be self-aware, kind of aware that they have an amount of knowledge and somebody else has different knowledge, because like you say, they know something's hidden, but then they realize that nobody else does, and they start to get that awareness of how different people have different accesses to information. So that's probably really exciting, like, oh, only I know where it is. Or
and they might have seen adults do that as well, because, you know, like what's in the box or what's in the bag, and be like, oh, this is very exciting. And you know, you might describe what's in it, and that's like, it's an exciting activity, and then they want to experience that for themselves as well. I mean, there's lots of fun things about it.
It's great. I think this is probably my favorite one. What kind of things can we do to promote like those kind of play stuff?
I mean, lots of things with providing enough resources for them to do so. So making sure that you have lots of kind of fabrics or paper or materials that they can wrap things up or hide themselves in. I mean, like, when children are under the covers,
Oh, they
they're
love it.
enveloping themselves. That's
Yeah.
very exciting too. Or like having those secret conversations under the sheet. You're like,
Yeah.
yes. So
Oh.
providing things like that so that they can do it. I mean, even having tents or little teepees or little spaces like under the table that sometimes, you just put, it doesn't have to be expensive, just put a piece of like old fabric that you can find over that. And that's a nice enveloping space for them.
Yeah.
And also dolls. That's a big one as well. You can envelope dolls in fabric and wrap them up as well. So they might have, they'll see that with babies as well, enveloping them, and they'll want to do the same thing. So
And like having like boxes with lids with a little slit in or something,
yeah,
or things that,
exactly.
like Kim's game, just play Kim's game and things like that as well, and just have those exposures to those kind of fun peekaboo games. I love it.
Yeah.
Cute. Okay, rotation/circular schema. What's this?
Oh, I love this one.
Do
Do you want to
you?
talk a bit about
Yeah.
it?
No, you go for it. But I have two that I think are my favourites. This is one of them.
Oh.
So it's all about learning how things move, turn, and spin physically, and like exploring how they rotate and twist. So as the name kind of alludes to, how things rotate and circular like objects and how they move. So you might see them turning taps on and off, especially those ones that go round and round.
Yes.
Yes, just playing with those, you're like, oh my God, there's so much water.
Yeah, when you've turned it off and then you come back and the
Yeah.
baby's turned it on and you're like, for goodness sake, I've just turned it off. You just get yourself wet. Yeah.
Look, so much fun to twist.
It is fun. I'm not going to lie. It is fun.
So playing with those sort of objects that twist or move, and then kind of even spinning themselves round, that's really fun, seeing how things go circular. And they might watch objects that spin as well. So things like washing machine or water going around the sink or the drain, even the lid, to be honest, because that's exciting. So they might be there flashing the loop, being like, ooh, what's going on?
Yeah, they love watching their poo go around. It's quite an entertainment.
And then, of course, like wheels, cogs, dials, all that sort of thing. They'll enjoy looking at that and
exploring how they can affect the rotation. So for example, the water's going down the drain. Can they do something that will then affect the flow of that? I think that's really fascinating in this schema about how they can make it change, speed up, slow down,
stop, change direction. Yeah. Okay. See, for me, I just feel sick thinking about this because I'm like, me spinning things just make me feel quite
it's not
nauseous.
for everyone.
It's not for everyone. It's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's quite fun, quite explorative. I feel like it's quite sensory as well.
I feel like a lot of schemas are very sensory,
Yeah.
actually. There's always a lot of sensory elements to them. You can always bring that in, which is nice.
So what kind of things could we bring in for this schema then in our settings?
Well, I have a lot of thought about all those circular objects. So thinking about the wheels, or even, things that you can turn a circular way, like ribbons or things that roll down a slope. So lots of things that kind of have a circular shape to them, or spin, like spinning toys, or even like rings and bangles, lids, like all these sort of things they can play with and explore, as well as they might want to draw or paint circles or rotational shapes, and of course move themselves. A nice one is like playing games in circles as well, like if like ring a Rosie, that sort of thing. That would be nice.
Oh yeah,
seeing that circular shape and just exploring.
Duck Goose and things.
Yeah, and the parachute.
Oh yes,
I used to love the parachute. So exciting.
See, I liked it because I was enveloped in it.
There you go. But that's so true though, because it was like another space, wasn't it? And it was very exciting again, because
So
you were
exciting.
just in this special place.
You stick it under your bum, and then you've got a fruit, and they say fruit salad, and everyone runs, and you're like, oh, we're gonna catch it. Yeah. So schemas can cross over, guys. I'm loving it. I like it. Transforming schema. I feel like I've got just Transformers the robot in my head at the minute. That's not what it is it?
Not quite.
No. This is
your
my
actual favorite. Your real
favorite.
All right, tell us all about it.
Yeah, I love this one because it's when children are really exploring the cause and effect and creating new things by exploring what happens when things are mixed together. So you get a lot of messy play, a lot of mixing materials, craft activities where they're cutting and tearing things apart and seeing how things be formed together. Yeah, lots and lots of messy play. And there's the seasonal changes as well, and how things are transforming in nature.
Oh,
And
yeah.
as you know, I love a lot of things to do with nature.
We
So
love
the
a bit of nature, don't we?
yeah.
Big
So the
fans.
whole fascination of something growing from a seed to a plant, and how what happens when rain mixes with mud. And yeah, I love this schema.
Okay, you've convinced me. I feel like this is my favorite one as well, because the thing for me about this is life cycles. I
Mm.
think nature is so incredible. And I remember every year, right, in my nursery, I used to get, one of my colleagues had a pond in her garden. I'm sure I've talked about this on an episode before, but I'll say it again because it's so good. And I would get her frog spawn from her pond, and I'd set up a man-made pond in the nursery, and we would watch the frog spawn change and grow, and then we'd have the frogs and we'd release them back into the pond that they came from. And the magic that those kids saw and that I felt, to be honest, and watching that transformation, I just think that's awesome. And they'd act it out as well, and it was just hilarious. These little kids on the floor trying to pretend to be little tadpoles, and then they go pop, and they're like, "Oh, I've got my tail now," and it's the cutest thing, and I love it.
Yeah, so I mean, nature is perfect for that, because there's so many different things that are transforming all the time in nature. So yeah, so transforming is so many different things, but yeah, I love this schema. So in our settings, providing things like mud kitchens and role play cooking and experiences of things like mashing things and grinding things to make soups and ice cream and things like that is perfect. Gardening and growing, obviously, to explore the nature aspect, watering cans and putting seeds in soil and watching them change over time.
Like a malleable area as well, like with lots of like modeling
Mm.
dough and different cutty pieces. And
Yeah, and involving children in creating the modeling dough. I mean, that's really important as well, because you're taking some dry ingredients and then they become wet, and then they form into something that they can then mold and use. So it's the science of it, isn't it? It's investigating the science of how materials go together. And then obviously lots of messy play and the craft activities that I've mentioned. So using things like scissors and hole punches and card and different types of paper that can be ripped and crunched together. And yeah, it's great. Love
it sounds so much fun. And I just kind of want to make a point here because I feel like I'm guilty of this. When you hear that, you think, oh, they just break everything. But actually, there's that other side of creating things as well,
Mm.
isn't there? So it's like things like Lego, or Duplo or blocks or something like that. They're taking pieces and they're transforming them by putting them together and creating something. Is that kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, so taking things that might be different materials to combine together to make something new. However, I would say probably the blocks is more, I mean, it is creating something new, but it's the cause and effect that children are working through with this schema. So, yeah, I would say it is, but probably in the transforming schema, you're looking at probably the more messiness of it, if you see what I mean.
She's basically saying, Shana, get over it. The kids can be messy.
Let them be
Just
messy.
let
Yeah.
them do it. All right. Message received loud and clear. I got it. Orientation schema. What's that?
So, I mean, I like this one as well, actually. So,
You like them all.
I
Tell
think I
us
like
a
them
one you
all.
don't like.
I don't think there is.
Exactly.
So, this is when children are learning about how objects and themselves look from different angles and places and positions. So, they're really exploring how the world can look from different perspectives. So, from upside down, from high up, looking behind them. So, quite often you might see children running, but looking behind them.
Yes.
And then obviously looking at things from different heights. So children that are working in this schema tend to be taking risks. So there's a lot of risky play, which we talked about in a different episode. Climbing and hanging upside down because they're interested in seeing what something looks like from a different angle. Walking backwards, like I've mentioned, as they run and walk. and just generally looking at objects in different ways. So they might even look at objects through different things, maybe looking through
those coloured, we get those coloured kind of see-through-ish plastic slides.
Shapes
Yeah, the
often,
coloured shapes, and they look through it like, oh, you Miss
Exactly.
Walker, you're green.
Yeah, definitely. Or looking through something very small.
Yeah.
And seeing how it looks big, but you're looking at through something very small.
Yeah, like magnifying glasses, or they even use like toilet tubes, don't they, from the junk modelling area? They just go around and it's like, hey, you've made a toy. You know what? You're happy. That's great. You do you.
Yeah,
Is it the same with objects? Like, about perspective? Is it if they can't change their view, do they then also change the object to look at that at different angles?
Yeah, I mean, it's both, and you'll find that with lots of the schemas, that whatever it is it's the object as well as themselves.
Right.
So this one, you'll have the physical, them doing something, so looking at things in different angles or positions, or you might have them changing the position of items. So putting something up high to see how it might look, putting something underneath something,
like putting the dolly upside down and stuff like that. And
so looking at how objects look in different positions.
I like it. I feel like that's a hard one to support in settings, or am I wrong? What can we do for that one?
So there's a lot of loose part manipulation. So using mirrors, using different materials that they can look at things through or turn upside down, or playing at different heights and levels. So things like looking, like you were mentioning earlier, using crates and ramps and standing on them and looking, or maybe going underneath something to look at how something looks from down low to up high. Also things like lots of physical activities, so swinging and rolling and climbing and rolling down hills, to look at things and how they're changing as they're moving. And things like the looking through binoculars or the tubes that you've just mentioned, and magnifying glasses, and things like kaleidoscopes.
They're great.
They're cool, aren't they? Yeah.
Hours of fun with those. I love it. And then you make your own with the junk modelling tubes, and you put like little different coloured tissue paper in, and then they turn it around, and they feel like they're superstars, like they've just made a scientific invention, and it's the cutest. Yeah. Okay, so I feel like that one is very similar to this one we're going to talk about now, positioning schema. That sounds very similar to orientation, or I completely misunderstood it.
This is where they do cross over, and we've mentioned that before, that you can look at something and think that it's one schema, but they might actually be working through two schemas at the same time. So positioning schema is more to do with children lining up objects up,
right,
putting things in rows, making patterns, and again organizing objects in a particular way. So it's slightly different. If you were thinking of the orientating schema, they do closely link. So you will have children that might be placing objects in a line, but then they might want to put them at a different height, or at a different angle, or position things on a ramp. So you might get the crossover. You might see children lining things up, like I've mentioned, in a row, sorting and organizing toys or objects, be putting things in colour or size order. So those are the kind of things that children would probably present with. So things like, which you would love in a setting, is lining books up neatly.
I feel like this is your schema, actually.
They have done
very
that.
organised.
Or at tidy up time, maybe organising all the pencil pots by colour.
Oh, these are my people.
Yeah, I was going to say, you love these.
These are my kind of kids. Get me some more of this schema. Yes.
The tidy up time is a good one for this.
Yeah, and they are really good at it. But then also I've noticed with these kids, when you said something about the books, that just instantly hit a memory. Even though we had a reading garden and it was all organised, they would put the books out on the floor and just line them up for fun. As in, it wasn't tidy up time, it wasn't this. It was just, that was their game. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm just lining the books up. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's, for me, that wouldn't seem like a fun task, but for them, they were living their best life. And I was like, okay, you do it. I mean, as long as you put them back, but I know that you will, because you've got that schema, and I know you'll be fine.
You're like, I'm good with organising this. Don't worry.
Got it handled. Oh, that's so interesting.
I mean, even like, have you seen those rainbow coloured books?
Stop.
I mean,
I'm obsessed with rainbow. Everything has to be in rainbow order.
Well, it's positioning, isn't it? Or sorting by colour. And sometimes you sort by size as well, and it's very satisfying.
It's so satisfying. Like,
Yeah.
This is definitely your schema.
This is for you.
This
This
is
was made for
me.
you.
Oh my God, I'm really excited just thinking about it. Like, you should see my house. Everything is in colour order.
Well, and that's a really good point to make. If you're thinking of as you develop, as you grow up, if the positioning schema is your preferred type of schema, you will do things like line up your spices on your spice rack so that
In alphabetical order.
Exactly.
Wow.
How did you know?
Okay.
I mean, I think we could guess.
Okay, so this is how deep this schema goes for me, right? And I still do this now, even in my job, even though I'm not a teacher anymore. I still got to keep data and stuff. But all of my planning was color coded. Monday was red, Tuesday was orange,
Wow.
Wednesday was yellow, Thursday was green, Friday was blue. And I mean, if any of my colleagues or previous colleagues that are listening to this right now, they're going to be like, oh my God, yeah. All of my planning, all of my documentation is color coded, and it always has been.
Yeah, well, I think some people are much more like tuned in to certain ones. And I don't know if you've seen that organizing TV show, but they organize everything by color. And they actually...
Oh yeah, on that streaming site.
Yes. And what's really interesting is that they say that their kids find it easier to tidy things up as well, because they're like, we organize the books like this so that the children can actually be like, oh, the yellow goes with the yellow and the orange goes with the orange. And she says she even does it for her crisps, which I think is, next level.
Okay, that's a step too far. Like, even I can be like,
But it makes me laugh though, because she's here making the shopping list, and she goes, what are we low on? They're like, yeah, we're low on blue. And she's like, oh yeah, okay, salt and vinegar.
oh wow.
Like,
okay, that's next level.
That is next level. But it makes me laugh because it shows you adults appreciate a good positioning.
We do. And I feel like this is probably one of the easier ones for early years settings to typically support, because I feel like we do a lot of support in this schema anyway, in terms of like sorting and positioning and size ordering, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the continuous provision is all geared up, for all of these schemas, actually, But yeah, there's a lot of sorting and organising toys, so providing baskets and boxes and clear containers so that children can see what's in them. But also things like playing in the home corner, setting up dinner, using the cutlery and positioning the cutlery on the table, and cooking and eating and tidying away, all of that role play, they will be using positional actions to support them, really. So, and then also there's all the natural resources that obviously children can go and gather and bring to wherever they're exploring, and make patterns using the different objects that they find. So they might line up conkers, or they might make a symmetrical pattern. So yeah, using natural and manufactured loose parts is brilliant for this schema.
Yeah, I feel like vehicles and road games, and do you remember those big maps you used to get when you was a kid, and it was just a giant like road map? I would spend hours playing with that, with little cars and putting them in the car park and making sure the police car goes to the police station. And is that kind of also sorting and positioning in that kind of way?
Yeah, and actually you've crossed over into a different schema again there, because you've
No apology.
You've put them in a boundary as
You'd
well.
be transporting probably as well.
Oh yeah.
And seeing how the trajectory of them move, maybe.
Yeah.
Tick, 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 tick. I like it. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
same with like the little
boundaries.
train sets as well.
Yeah,
because people
the
are
train
like,
sets.
at the station, there's the man like
Yes.
checking the tickets. They're in their positions, but you're also
Yeah.
seeing how they move, and it's
Oh.
they do cross over.
They do. Oh, that's cute. I like that. Okay, last but certainly not least, then the connection schema.
So this is all about exploring how things join together and separate. I mean, it makes a lot of sense with connection, because you see a lot of children fascinated, for example, with magnets. I mean, the first time a child sees some sort of magnetic toy, you can see that innate focus and interest for it. But
mind blown.
How? Yes, trying to figure it out because it's fascinating. So they'll try and join objects, materials together, and see how they connect and disconnect repeatedly if they can. And also playing with their own fastenings. That's why they're fascinated with zips as well. I mean, zips are fascinating if you really look at them. Or buttons and poppers. And that's sometimes when they're getting ready to go outside, you might think, could we quicken this up a little bit? But sometimes they're just in their fastenings. But look at these, Velcro. It's fascinating. And they'll see their friend's shoes and they'll be like, but there's a different to mine, or their jacket's different and they've got a button. How's this working?
And actually, Shana, what you said before about the transforming and using blocks, this is probably
this
where
is
you'll
it
have,
belongs.
you'll
A
have
lot of
more
connection.
connecting things and taking them apart.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like it. And again, I feel like this is another probably good one that earlier settings are probably pretty geared up to do, aren't we? Because we've got lots of things that they like to put together and take apart. Well, maybe not the taking apart part.
Yeah, but still breaking pieces apart in terms of blocks that connect together, and even threading as well. So that's something that we provide a lot, and so we'll be putting those on, and then they'll also be taking them off and seeing how that works. Or tying things together and using kind of different threading boards, and of course all those magnetic toys that you can explore and construct. And then the different structures you could use with bricks, as well as the fastenings, which they'll also see on dolls' clothes or dressing up and role play things as well, which is nice. But lots of different, I mean, even the gate to your outdoor area, or when they leave they'll be like, oh, how does this work? There's lots of different ways that things connect that you might not necessarily think about. Even them closing the doors, sometimes they have a special automatic lock and you think, could you not do that? But they'll be there thinking, how does this work? They're figuring things out.
It's like when a toddler, they figure out how to unlock the shower.
Exactly.
Where, the bathroom door when you're in the shower, and you're like, no, 5 minutes peace, I'm gone.
They're just fascinated with connection.
I like it. So we're doing quite a lot. There's a lot to learn here. I quite like this. This is fun. And we've got a couple of questions as well from listeners who maybe want to explore schemas more in their settings. One question is, how can I support language through schema play? That's a good question, because I'm assuming there's quite a lot of vocabulary involved in all of these.
Yeah, definitely. There's a huge amount of language, and actually, because obviously children will be really engaged and fascinated in their plays. So for the adult to be sitting alongside and maybe modeling some of that language is a great way to give children the voice of talking about the schemas that they're exploring as well. We've created a resource which is based around all the different schema play language that you can use, thinking about some of the core language and some extending language opportunities that you might want to use to support children as they're playing and exploring the schema that they're currently in. So I think you're going to maybe add the link to the podcast.
Yes, I will. You know it. We've got another question as well. It says, how can schema play look different at different stages of development? Because I remember you saying before that it doesn't matter what age the child is, they can do any schema. So of course, a child in the enveloping schema at maybe 1 year old is going to look very different to maybe a child that's doing that schema at 5 years old, right?
Yeah, so it will grow and develop with the child. So I think that's something to just bear in mind, that it's not I think we talked about this last time, it's not a tick box. They're not done with this schema. They'll come back to it. They'll have different fascinations. And like you say, depending on their age, it will look very, very different. And schemas are so important as a part of their cognitive development in general, and they'll grow and adapt. So as we were saying, in terms of extending their schema play and behavior, they will be able to do that at different extents depending on their age and depending on the scaffolding and the resources. So when we were saying, at first when they're, for example, enclosing something, it might just be a big pile of toys at first, but later when they start seeing the differences and different resources, they might start to separate those again, and that will be a bigger extent when they're younger and when they're older. But schemas are very important throughout their development, and Jean Piaget talks about that in greater detail if people want to find out what schemas look like when it's not just play and behavior, when you're looking at kind of repeated actions like the sucking or the grabbing, which might look quite different to what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So what we focused on is schema play and behavior that we usually see in the early years, but when they're a bit younger, it might look a lot more basic in some ways, but they're still learning about the world around them, and it's a huge part of their development.
Cool. This is so much knowledge. I'm loving it. Now, as always, at the end of the episode, we always play a game, but I've been told I've been hijacked. What's happening?
It's our turn.
Be afraid.
I am
Very afraid.
What is this game that you're
We've
making a
got-
game for me?
You put us through the paces last time. It is our turn.
Oh, so it's payback.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's kind of my own fault then, isn't it? All right.
Definitely is.
What's happening?
So we've got 4 different play scenarios, and you need to guess what schema the children are currently exploring.
Oh dear God.
You can do it if you've been listening.
Yeah, this is a test of whether I actually listen to you two.
Exactly. Or whether you're going, this sounds great. I've immediately forgotten what you've said.
Oh no, but I also have a terrible memory. Okay, I'm going to try really hard. Okay. Question before we begin. Can there be more than one schema? Or do I have to pick one?
It's mainly one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's one obvious one. We will, consider other options.
Okay. Is there like a point system? Am I going to win a prize?
Yeah.
The joy of taking part.
Prize of pride.
Oh, boo.
Well, it's,
Boo. I want a trip to
we're
Mallorca.
still waiting on our prize from last time.
Oh, yeah. Let's go with the joy thing. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, question
I see
one.
how it's come
Moving
up.
on.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, first scenario. You observe a child fascinated with filling up cups of water, climbing into cardboard boxes, and building fenced areas and placing small world animals inside the space.
Okay, I was thinking one thing at the beginning and then you said about enclosing stuff and I was like, oh. So when you said water, I was thinking transporting. And then you said about, what was the kid doing to themselves?
Climbing into
cardboard
boxes.
boxes.
Right, then they climbed into something and then it was putting things in boundaries. So I'm gonna say enclosing. The enclosing schema.
Ooh, yeah!
Yeah! 10 points to Gryffindor. Okay. Phew. You threw me with that first bit.
Yeah, I think that bit was tricky, but that's why sometimes some activities do cross over.
Yeah. Okay,
So
cool.
it can be more than one, yeah.
Phew. Okay.
Right, you ready for number 2?
I'm on a roll. Yeah, they hit me.
You observe a child playing outside, rolling tyres and rolling themselves down a bank, spinning around on the spot and fascinated with watching the sand whiz around a sand wheel. They also love to watch water spiral down the plug hole when washing their hands.
This one is easy for me because I felt sick as you were saying it. And this is the one that makes me feel sick and dizzy. So this is the rotation/circular schema.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. Very
Thank you.
impressed.
Do you see how we're supporting you instead of being
Oh,
like,
yeah, okay.
boo?
Oh, yeah. It's just because you're clever, okay?
You're clever too.
We're cheering you on.
You
Yes.
are. You're lovely. Okay. I'm sorry. Next question.
Okay, schema scenario number 3.
Lou, why do you make it sound so scary? Julia's really chilled when she says the scenarios. You make me feel like I'm on like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire
I
or
know,
something.
I feel like presenter energy.
I think I should be on a quiz show.
I
think
feel
you
like
could
you
do
should.
it.
You're stressing me out.
Sorry.
Okay, go on, keep going.
Number 3.
What was that?
This child loves anything sensory. They love combining different messy materials, mixing and creating different concoctions in the mud kitchen. When talking about their schema play with their caregiver, they mention to you that their child loves holding their food in their mouth for quite a long time before swallowing it, enjoying whatever is happening.
Ooh.
And they love to mix their drink with their food at
That is
dinner time,
disgusting. That is
just to see what happens.
no. That's messed up. You don't. You don't put food. You don't put food in your drink.
Well,
It's
this
disgraceful.
child does because they're exploring this schema
More power to them, but
and seeing what happens as cause and effect.
okay. Well, this is unfair because I feel like we didn't cover this scenario while we were talking.
Some of it we did because we talked.
Yeah, but not the kid swilling his food in his mouth.
No, but this is a good example of we might not cover everything that you might see,
All right.
but it's good to try and make links.
Yeah, I've got to think for myself. Okay. Okay. Well, I thought connecting a little bit because of the making things, but I feel like I'm leaning more towards transforming. No, because okay, no, I'm just gonna go with transforming. In my mind, I was like, but how is like mixing food transforming? It's just disgusting. Like that's not
You're
transforming.
getting too stuck on the disgusting.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I am. All right.
When you say mixing,
yeah.
Oh, mixing. Okay, yeah, transforming. I'm gonna go with.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I think you're getting too stuck on the fact that you were disgusted by it to really focus in on what they were doing.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about them holding in their mouths their food.
Imagine they've got ice cream or something.
No, I'm imagining. Can we not imagine?
But it's transforming, isn't it?
Yeah. When I was a child, I remember whenever I got given ice cream, I used to sit and mix it until it went really runny.
Yeah,
rather than
and then drink it.
Rather than eating it as a solid. Yeah.
To be fair, I did that. I made it turned into like ice cream soup. I preferred it.
Transforming.
That's transforming. You've transformed it from a solid, well, a soft solid, into something that's now runny. So you're transforming it.
When you put it like that, that's fine. But
you're getting too disgusted.
Let's put food in our drink. Yeah, let's.
But that can happen though. Yeah. That's still transforming.
Right. Okay,
just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not happening.
I'm sorry. Okay, next question.
All right, last one. You notice a child in your setting loves to sort and organise toys and objects. You observe them lining up cars, or when playing with wooden blocks, they make a long line, placing an item on the top of each block. At tidy up time, they take great satisfaction in sorting the pencil pots by colour and arranging the books on the bookshelf, or making sure all the water bottles are neatly put away after snack time.
These are my people. These are my position schemers.
Space now.
I'm happy now. We ended on a high. Am I right though?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
right.
like we did this on purpose.
It's like you knew which ones. Yeah. Oh, yay. So I got full marks. Did I get 4 marks?
4 out of 4.
So this is a lesson learned if you're an educator. If you don't like a schema, you have to be careful that you're still supporting that schema.
Very true.
Yeah, all right. Can we stop telling me off now?
I'm not telling you off, but I think we do
like...
lean towards certain schemas.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
And we might be... It's good to be aware.
Yeah, it is.
I'd be the person jumping in puddles and mixing and making quite a lot of mess, I think.
Oh, I like that. Julia, what schema would you be?
I think I quite like the enveloping one.
Yeah.
Or enclosure, because I do like putting things in boxes too. Or hiding boxes, that's fun.
That's cute. Basically, she's untidy and she hides her mess under the bed.
Or hiding under the table, like under the sheet. That's so fun.
That is
Closing is fun.
That is fun. Yeah.
Little tents. Yeah.
Cute. I like it. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for teaching us all about schemas.
Anytime.
And well done.
Yes.
I was very impressed.
Well, now I know how it's like to be on the other side, so I'm sorry if I make the quizzes too intense.
And then don't champion us when we're doing so well.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I learned my lesson. I apologise.
Supportive environment, please.
Right. Yeah. Enabling environment psychologically. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for teaching me so much. And we've had fun. And I can't wait to see what we talk about next.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, who knows?
Well, hopefully you, because we've got to plan this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Oyster.
All right. Great. Have a lovely day, guys. See you soon.
Thanks.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Great. Great, there you go. Lots of things to remember and learn about, right? I didn't know there were 9 different schemas to start off with. But hopefully this has helped you learn a little bit more about what to look for in your settings and also how you can help as well. So if you want any more information, please check out the description of this episode, because I've linked some really cool resources that Julia and Louise and the team have made to help do some further learning, or maybe do a staff meeting on, or teach your team about schemas and what to do. So go check it out there. And until then, I'll see you next time. Bye. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you would like to join in or would like to know more, then come and find us on our social media sites. We have a Facebook page, Facebook groups, an Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. All the links of where to find us will be in our podcast description. Come and join the conversation. And whatever you're doing today, I hope you have a great day.